It is my privilege to host this panel about XFN, XFilesNews. Just a brief introduction before I bring up our guests. XFilesNews was started in 2007, but XFilesNews is hardly sufficient to describe what it has been for the past 12 years. XFilesNews provided news, yes, via website and social media feeds. It also quashed false rumors, provided reviews, not always positive, I happen to know, hosted tweetathons and rewatches, supported X-Files talent in all their other projects, campaigned victoriously, I might add, for the return of the X-Files during 7 long and sometimes discouraging years, served as a social network in all senses of that word, an online store, and raised funds for charity. At its height, XFN had 25 staff or collaborators in 5 different countries around the world, and XFN published its last official post in January. So now I would like to introduce Kai Johnson, the features editor, Roi Ollson, the managing editor, Keva Andersen, the deputy editor-in-chief, and Avi Quijada, the editor-in-chief. So I have so many questions I could take up the next hour by myself, but I will not do that. I'm going to ask a few questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to you in the microphone. So be thinking about what you want to ask. But first, I'd like to ask an easy question. Talk about why and how XFilesNews came to be, how it got started.
Can you hear me right? Okay. XFilesNews actually was created by another fan called Holly Simon. She came up with the idea of having a venue or some sort of website where we can get news from the second movie. And it was a very informal affair. It had a chat room. And this was back in October of 2007. And because the most generic thing that you do when looking for X-Files news is basically Google X-Files News. Not only does she secure a really good handle, but also it was a way that I ran into her because I literally Googled X-Files News and it was a thing that came up, and I wrote to her and said, like, do you need help? I would love to be part of this in some way. And at the time, I had also been invited to the expo in Chile, where you guys were confirmed to go. And I offered to go to Chile and cover the event for them. And so it came to be. It was a very different project back then. We didn't have any kind of plan. And we just wanted to be together, and there was several things that were built around the movie, like that seismic video messaging thing, and we would text each other videos and communicate. But mainly we just wanted news about the show that we would never had, that we lost when the official page went down. And that was the initial project, yeah. Mm-hmm. That's how it came to be.
And how did the rest of you get involved in this with Avi?
Okay, so I got involved because Avi was jealous, basically. Roi and I were talking on Haven. I'm sure you all know Haven. I think we were actually, like, angry about bones. So we started talking, and then Avi, like, slides into my DMs, which weren't DMs at the time, but she slides into my DMs. She's like, hey. I'm like, hi. And she's like, do you want to write something for me? I was like, no, not really. And she was like, well, do it anyway. I was like, oh, fine. And that's basically our relationship. That's why I'm here this weekend. She's like, you got to come? I'm like, no. Here I am.
And here you are.
So I was 18, and I had just...
Younger.
Well, I was 17 when I was, like, on XFN, and, like... I wasn't working for XFN until I turned 18. So I was like kind of a,
Hey, so
well, working is a nice word for it. But so I'd kind of been around because I was a younger file, but I was like all over the news on like any message board I could find. So I was like hungry for news about the X-Files. And eventually I was just around so much that Abby's like, I'm going to put this child to work. And it was like a couple weeks after I graduated from high school, she's like, why don't you write something for me? And it's been 10 years since that happened. And here we are.
I'm thinking this "why don't you write something for me" is becoming something of a common theme, because that's how I was approached too. I think my first actual interaction with XFN was Greenlight Baby, the parody music video we did in 2012, which was a parody song to Call Me Maybe. For the greenlight of a third film, I wrote that. Tiffany Duvall sang the song, and I cut together a video, and it was shortly after that, because I work in news as my day job, Avi again slides into my DMs and says, do you want to write something for me? And yeah, I think that was 2013, and well, here I am.
I was in Venezuela then, and I asked Erica Frega what she thought about you, if you were really good. And I was like, let's do a video conference and like an interview. And then, because back then I already knew that if I was gonna take on coming back to the States, I had to go back to my country. I was probably gonna be too busy to do this by myself. And I needed someone that was strong enough to not only learn from what we had done, but also had the knowledge of being really serious about something. And so.
Okay, now it gets more difficult. X-Files News eventually became officially recognized by Fox, but you know, fans are a diverse group, and what's it been like? What have been the politics of dealing with other X-Files websites, other X-Files fans? How difficult has that been? How united or otherwise have the fans been in your experience these past 12 years?
Okay, yes, it's been really hard. One, because in reality, collaboration altogether, even internally, isn't easy all the time. And externally, when people have different goals and a different system and a different thing, you can't always get along. But we always strived.
What were the fights about, though? Like opinions about the show, or that you're getting more attention than somebody else, or what were the disagreements?
And I say this with all the kindness in the world. We never meant to like be seen that way, but some people would come up to us and say, how dare you have more access than we do? Or why are you guys taking more seriously than we do? And I'm not going to name anyone in particular. And we understand that. I don't know why that happened, other than maybe I did have industry relationships before because I'm a producer. And maybe I spoke to the studio in a way that they consider us different. And it was also, yeah, the official title helped a lot, because we would approach someone and say, hey, Fox made us official. We're not playing around. We want to have serious questions. We're not going to hound you. We're going to protect your image as much as we can. But that didn't mean that we would be complacent and things, and that also came with a price. And I wish, my goal at some point during this road was that we could all be a huge network of sites working together. And there were several projects spearheaded by other people even to not only do this for the sake of collaboration and being integrated, but also to salvage so much of the content that was out there that couldn't be harnessed in like just the one site, which was a great project. But as it is, human nature, you know, it doesn't always work. but we got into things as like we would like text someone's like, why didn't you tell me that you were going to be in this convention? We'd have covered, and they would reply with something like, what do you think, you're the only people that can do news about things? I'm like, no, I just wanted to cover it. And then it would escalate and those things got exhausting because at the root of everything, we just wanted to help. Whether that help was taken in good nature or not.
But I'm asking about the conflict because that's exciting, but a lot of it must have been very positive too, sort of finding fans all around the world and finding friends and how much you have in common. Does anybody want to talk about that?
I can take a stab at it. I think for me, conflict or not, at the end of the day, I just want to share all of this with everybody else. That's been the biggest thing for me. I treat this just as seriously as I do my day job because I feel like we've, for whatever reason, gotten this special privilege that we've been able to do the things we do and speak with the people that we speak with. And I just want to make sure everybody else gets to hear about it too. And it's just been so much fun to be able to share things with you. And as far as finding friends along the way, I mean, I have friends, I've met all of you online. Basically everybody I know since I moved to Los Angeles were X-Files that I met online. And the most moving thing for me, especially this year, was when we worked on the 25th anniversary documentary. I see a lot of familiar faces in here who participated in that, and I bawled when some of those clips came in because it was just so moving how much this show had affected so many of you and all of us, and it was just amazing to be able to share that spirit, that even if we do argue about who does what or who's the baby daddy and all that stuff, at the end of the day, there's all just this affection for, it's, I guess I'm getting long-winded, but it's just that affection at the end of the day, and that I feel it's really nice to be able to come together around something positive.
And let's just say, in that regard, I feel like we've all saved each other in a way or another. We're our support system, and we like to be people's support system because we meet so many of you guys on conventions, and then we end up spearheading projects together or going on trips together, and that's great. And that's something that us being on XFN, sometimes we couldn't do it completely because we were so busy. We didn't have the time to actually sit down on conventions and such because we were working. Because the downside of having the access is that then everyone expects much more of you. And for instance, we would get into the situations where the talent would see us as a vehicle for them as well. And so would get basically requests from not only the studio, but the talent. And we want to give back to them the favor that they're given to us and to trust in us and all this stuff. So we would end up coming at the end of every con or every meet or everything, just drained. And then realizing all the stuff that happened around us that we captured and we put videos on and all this stuff. And the actual first time that we're really enjoying these things is when we sit down to edit it, or like when we're like, yeah, it's not, we're not really there.
Oh, we got some good stuff yesterday. I'm excited.
Yeah. But for a lot of things that we do see, I've seen them through a camera lens and through my phone screen, and I'll be sitting on the floor in front of David and Mitch at a convention, and I'm furiously typing away, and they're like, who the hell is this girl on the floor with a camera and 3 Apple devices? What is she doing? It's a little bit strange, but
Who called you out? Was it David?
it was David who was like, why are you on your phone? I was like, well, I'm tweeting the event, so.
Right here, does everybody know who this is here? So Franken Bear went on a world tour in 2009, and I'm going to ask them all to speak about this, but to me, among the many things that were really impressive about XFN was the fact that they raised money for charity. They took their love of the show and translated it into real-world good for, among other causes, the Santa Monica UCLA Rape Treatment Center, disaster relief in Chile, Heart Fan Artwork for Charity, Save the Waves, the American Cancer Society, SA Yes, South Africa Yes, and the Neurofibromatosis Incorporated. So can somebody talk about who Franken Bear is and how that happened?
So Franken Bear was born like late at night on Skype, and it was, I don't even know if you've seen the original like photo of Franken Bear, but like in the beginning, I think it was Franken Bear and Carter Bunny, was there?
Carter Fox.
No, Carter Fox is what it became, but in the beginning it was Carter Bunny, but we later determined that a bunny was like not masculine enough for Chris Carter.
But
So
then
we,
it was William Bunny then.
yes, William the Rabbit. So he was just like a photo of like, it was like a bear with like your face on it. And it like spiraled wildly from there into like fandom lore. And I have like a folder with like really interesting images of Franken Bear like cropped into like weird movie posters or like famous movie scenes. I don't even know how they came about, like Franken Bear with like bags of Canadian milk. Just like really, and so eventually he just became like a real bear, and he has his like official like Frank gear, and he traveled everywhere, and then he had a blog everywhere he went, and he met files in every city, and one file would like fly with him to a convention, or they would take a train to another city, and he like accumulated a really heavy load of pins.
Like we created, and this is how we got to meet so many people. We created a bit of a network where we would have reps on every country that we could reach, and that person would reach out to other fan clubs inside that country, and they would plan meetups around the fact that the bear was coming. And so the compromise, and actually it was a little bit of a risk for whomever was doing that, is that they had to compromise not only to write their experience as if it was Franken Bear that was visiting that city, but also, they covered every expense plus fundraising. So it was a big ordeal that we were asking just for the fact of having the excuse of being together and talking about the show. It was kind of like a bit of a expensive prompt, but it turned out so well, and there's so many communities that we still know are together because of Franken Bear, and that for me was totally worth the pain. He traveled for 2 years, so it was a long thing for us to coordinate in like different languages and trying to understand mailing systems. At some point he got lost in Russia for a little bit, and like we were terrified. And the fact is that this one was successful, and then we tried to do Carter Fox, and Carter Fox did get killed in Russia. So
It was Alex Krychek.
But it's amazing how XFN, as I say, was so much more than a news site, because it evolved into things like that, into literally gathering fans and raising money for good causes. One of the things that impressed me from the beginning was you guys had a very good sense of how to, as you say, deal with talent, like not just me, but Chris and all the actors in the studio, and it made it very easy, it felt for me, to cooperate with you guys and do things with you. But I imagine from your end it wasn't always easy dealing with us. So what are the stories you can just tell the people in this room about how difficult X-Files talent is? I won't tell anybody, so.
I would say this with a disclaimer that it got a lot better. A lot better in even the fact that when we run into each other on cons, we talk as friends. But my first interview ever on XFN, and it was a little bit of a trial by fire, besides having interviewed you in Chile, but for XFN after the promotion of the movie, was William B. Davis. And it was over the phone.
This is getting good now.
He was over the phone. My English wasn't as good yet. I was in Venezuela, he was in Canada. And you learn about the questions that you make over time, which one is gonna work, which one will lead to a great conversation, and avoid the ones that are not going to land well. At the end of our conversation, I sort of tried to delve into the fact of whether he thought himself as a villain or not, and he kind of took offense on it and was really despondent about it. And I tried to kind of smooth it out, but I remember hanging up the phone whenever the call was over and just being shaking, not because I was nervous, but just because I thought that, where is this leading to? And like, I called who was my coordinator at the time, Lisa Angelo, and I was like, this is the worst experience I've ever had with, like, feeling that I didn't do my job, and not only that, but that I ruined something for us. And then we met afterwards, and it just turns out that, one, over the phone, you can't get everything from a person, and two, Bill is just Bill. But yeah, he's the hero of the show. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, but we've had, like, you can tell. Yeah.
All right, so the cutting room. You know, David, when his album like first came out, it was right after Upfronts, right in New York. They were like a month out from filming. Everyone was just like high on the X-Files. It was a lot of fun, and I kind of knew that maybe Jillian was going to be like stopping by that night, so I came like fully prepared. I was like taking video on my phone. I had my Canon. At one point, I had a camera in both hands, and so when she came out, the room like lost it, and I had video already filming, so I just like kept going. Avi's messaging me at the time because she knows that it's the end of the concert. She's like, okay, are you done? And I can't respond because I'm filming on my phone. And of course, no, we're not done. The whole room has just like lost their minds. I was sitting down, but suddenly we were like all shoved against the stage. And so I had all this great footage, and I was also like working like 16 hours a day at that point. And Jillian's people Jillian wanted a gif of her hitting the tambourine. And it went from Jillian to her people to Avi to me, and it was this like line of people. What type of gif was it? Like, what size was it? What social network was it going on? Like, who else did you want in it? Like, you know,
what's the loop that you
what
want?
is it gonna be? So I ended
Is it
up
going down, up, or up,
yeah,
down?
and I made 17 different versions of this like one gif of Jillian and her tambourine. It took about 3.5 hours, and I think that's how I spent an evening once. But I mean, I guess it could be like worse, but.
Yeah. Yeah.
Worst gigs you could get.
I have a Jillian story
Yeah.
too. So it was the Doodle Day. I think I just started with XFN. Like, I'd written a couple of articles, but not done much, but I do video editing. So Avi was like, well, Jillian's people have, emailed, they want us to do a video. I'm like, yeah, I'll do that, no problem. So I cut one together because they sent us all like the pitches, and I cut one together, and it was fine. I was proud of it. Yeah, we're not sure. Could you do this? So I did that. Yeah, we're not loving that. Let's try something else. So I did like 6 versions. And they're still like, I don't know. So eventually I threw all the pitches into like the generic Apple slideshow thing. They were like, we love it. It's great. I was like, oh my God. So I spent probably like 30 hours and ended up using a 10-minute process that I could.
Please go up to the microphone. I'll keep asking, but I would rather hear from you than just me talking. What were the kinds of issues that kept you guys up at night? What were the things that stressed you out or that caused disagreement among the XFN team? What were the hard parts?
Well, back in the day, the blunt of the tech part of XFN of the site was a bit of a mystery to a lot of people because Holly had built the site. And I wasn't that versed in design back then, so I could help just a little bit, and we kept getting hacked. And we kept losing the site every 6 months. So that kept us at night a lot. At some point, we couldn't afford hosting anymore. A lot of us weren't working, and with the traffic of whenever stuff would start to happen, then the host that had us kept telling us, "You're done." So a friend of us one night he was just like, I'm gonna donate the hosting for you guys, and gave us the biggest hosting that we could find that night, and that's where we are right now, where Big Light now lives. That was one of the things. For some time, and when Tiffany DeVol was our kind of like public relations, and we kept meeting with you guys over, it's XF3 gonna happen, it's the revival gonna happen, like what's happening, and we started to feel responsible for having endeavored all these people into campaigning and nothing happening. And you know me, I am a sucker for absorbing people's problems and making it my responsibility and like trying to fix it. I just wanted to fix it. And we kept so many times like just thinking like what's the piece that's missing that we're not cracking to make this work. And it went into meetings with Fox, it went into meetings with you, with Chris, with whomever we can speak to try to help it and make a bigger impact to where we could convince people to do it. But that took at least 2 years of my life. And I still feel responsible for that because I feel like a lot of people put a lot of effort into doing things for not only for us or for the ideas that we spearheaded, but with a so-called promised outcome or hope to be the outcome, and sometimes it didn't materialize. So that kept me up at night.
I got one. I think for me, the biggest part was just the accuracy and making sure we were as correct as possible, because y'all are the smartest fandom out there. There is no question about that. And everybody, like the amount of detail everybody knows about this show, and it was one of those things where I don't dare mess up, because if I do, y'all will let me know, and it's a little terrifying to like check my Twitter. Oh, God. Right, yeah, typos and stuff like that. But it's also that I think is a good thing too, because it keeps us honest and keeps us on our toes and makes sure, you know, that we were doing the best possible job we could for everybody. But yeah, some of those nights where you've got a big piece coming out, especially if it's, you know, a review or something that's got an opinion where we know there's a wide range of opinions about things too. That's another thing that just kind of is like, you want to put your own voice out there too, but you don't want to trample anybody else's either. That kept me up.
You guys must know. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jay. The question. Hi, guys. I don't want to make this about XFest, but I have somewhere to go. I just want to say really briefly, as a fan of the show, and I've said this to you, Avi, I don't think you guys realize how important your contributions were. I'm a fan of the show myself, and I remember the first time when we put XFest together, and I got an email from Avi, and I was like, holy crap, you know, I was so excited. You guys were like celebrities to me, so I think that, you know, you guys don't understand how important that is to us, and I think they deserve a round of applause for everything they've done for the fandom. And I'd also, I'd be remiss not to say real quick that I want to thank Avi publicly. You know, this was a dream to have the show, and there wouldn't be an XFest 2 without her. She got us in touch with Frank, and she got us in touch with Mark, and you know, she's just an amazing, strong, powerful woman who keeps my ass in line and all my graphics spell checked. And so you got to have your affairs in order. And if it weren't for you, there wouldn't be an XFest 2 or an XFest 3, probably. So. I know you guys are viewing this as something of a swan song. However, I would like to leave that door open that should there be an XFest 3, we would love to have you guys there. And I think everybody in this room would probably agree with me. So, again, I don't want to make this about me. Thank you very much.
Hi, ladies. I also wanted to say thank you so much for all that you've done for the fandom. I know it's been a struggle sometimes, but we all follow you and we all love you. And my question was actually for everybody. I wanted to talk a little bit about, I know you're, you know, a lot of you are, I follow you individually, and Keva and Avi, and everybody's very feminist. And I wanted to kind of have you talk about how this fandom is dominated by women and how awesome that is. And also maybe how your feminism has grown since you started doing this.
I come from a country
which is very male dominated. I also have like it's only my mom and I, and like the rest of boys make the decisions. But luckily, I grew up in the one part of my family where my mom has the last say. So, having said that, I've been part of a fandom that's nurtured by women, and not only in the way that we make all the decisions, but also the ones that are so vocal about what's good, what's wrong, how we can take this and make it bigger. And growing up in this fandom for me was the best example of how to do things. The fact that XFN ended up being mostly women, because we did have three guys at some point, it wasn't because we chose it. I think it was that we had a sense of commitment that perhaps it's my opinion that it's rare to find in guys that are more practical thinking, and we were looking at the long run. What's the project? What's gonna come? We're committed as a family, and the guys understood it as well, but it wasn't what.
I think the guys wanted to be paid.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we
too.
said no, there's no pay. This is a labor of love. They were like, oh.
Yeah, that's also too. Is that I think the nurturing nature of us as women also serve to that. The stubbornness of everyone. Everyone is stubborn in XFN.
You have to be in this fandom.
Yeah. But I also think that because we also had Scully and Monica as examples as to what brought us together, not only to something to look at, but to like, then we got excited about each other's lives, mimicking in a way the level of achievement that those characters had. So, for instance, Roi is studying veterinary. Keva is a great journalist. Kai is, despite she not wanting to do it right now, she's a great writer and very good editor. And like we had so many people. Lily is the best editor that I've met, and I wish I always wanted to like champion all of their causes. Like, you want to do something, I want to help you, and that's. For me, as editor-in-chief, whether I'm retired or not, that's my responsibility as the family that we created, is that I want to champion all of their dreams. So every week I'm like, what can we do for Lily? What can we do for Jessa? What can we do for Lauren? So that's what, for me, the woman part of it was that the feminist, the protector part of it was that.
Yeah, I think through like working for XFN, I've like been exposed to so much more and like so much more of the fandom, and I've like developed an entirely different skill set that's in no way related to veterinary medicine at all. I put it on like my vet school applications. They're like, oh, well, like, what do you do in your free time? I was like, have you ever heard of the X-Files? I think that that's, you know, like I've sat down with like Keva Andersen, and like I'm comfortable doing that, and I know how to prep questions for that type of interview, and like where, you know, like how did I get from like graduating high school, I was like, you want to write an article, to like you being able to do that. And I feel like it's just like kind of expanded like my view, and I feel like more confident in like other areas because of that. You know, like if I can, you know, go to a convention and be like worried about this interview and get it done and it's fine and it's up online and people enjoyed it and like I didn't have to be worried about it, like then, you know, dealing with like clients in difficult situations with like their animals, like that's not, I mean, I know I can do that because I've done that in other situations. So I think that's been like an interesting way to like build self-confidence within, by like meeting all of you guys and going to conventions and stuff like that. So that's been interesting.
I can chime in quickly more.
Please.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Mr. Chocolate Cheese, won't you play?
I just got that song out of my head because I'd gotten rid of all of those masks, and now you're back.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I know I've met a lot of you guys over conventions, whatever, what have you. You had spoken briefly before about Haven.
Yeah.
A lot of people met that way. I was on Haven, but I never contributed. I'm not a writer. I was always like 1 or 2 beats behind where the conversation was going, so I was happy to read.
It was so difficult to keep up with the conversation.
was.
If you like missed a day, that was just it for you.
It was all over, but I enjoyed reading it. And people in this fandom can write, okay? Whether it's fan fiction, whether it is smutty fan fiction, whether it is a case file, whatever it is, people can write, and I just loved reading all that. So I'm glad you guys as X-Files News have given a lot of attention to writers and stuff like that. So that's awesome. Thank you for that part. You also mentioned you had your like a message board section on, and that's where I met a lot of my friends, my fandom friends. Again, I didn't really post a lot. I really got into it back to social media when the new seasons started coming out, and it was like boom, everybody was here, you know, and it was neat. So I do want to thank you. I met a lot of my fandom friends from X-Files News and the message board. When my mom passed away last August, it wasn't my friends that I saw every day in real life that helped me through it. It was the people I met here. It was the people I met through X-Files News. It was friends of friends, and they're the ones who sent me cards and messages. When I saw them at the conventions, they were the ones who came up and really helped me through it, so thank you.
Karen, thank you so much for that. That's awesome. And that really, to me, is the bottom line. What this has all been about is the family aspect of it. And I've had a similar experience where those are the people in my life when things have fallen apart and shit's hitting the fan. It's been my fan friends who have been there to pick me back up. And that is an experience I will forever be grateful for. And to your point also about the writers, that was one of my favorite things I got to do, was talk to the fanfic writers. I am so sorry I could not continue that because real life got in the way. But it was just the generosity of these fan writers who have kept this story moving, you know, for 25 years. And I hope that continues. I mean, it's just a wealth of opinions and wonderful things, and the story never has to end that way. So thank you to all of you here who write and do fan art.
Yes. Write more, please.
I wanted to echo what Karen said. My dad passed away last year too, and honestly, it's the people that I know through this fandom. I have good friends. I love my friends, but these are people that are all over the world. And I met them online, and then we finally met at a con. It was like the best explosion ever. Yeah. And we're just so tight. And then coming here, because my friend, she had to go get a picture or something. But because of Dominique, she said, you have to come to X-Fest. I was like, eh. And I thought, wait a minute. This is the person who has stood by me no matter what since the minute I met her. And so I'm here, and I'm so glad. It's not, seriously, I was saying, I was always like a step behind. I'm like, what is going on? I was in college. I was like trying to read like accounting stuff. It was like BS, right? But so I'd get on a weekend and try to make it up, and ugh. So, but I just want to say you've been so much a part of my life. I watched from the beginning because I'm that old, and I'm going to be like 92, hopefully, and be like, X-Files forever. So, and you all are a really big part of that. I'm very grateful for your work. Thank you.
Thank you to all of you guys, too, who participated in our rewatch. Oh, my God, was that amazing. Reading through all your tweets every night. It's 2 o'clock in the morning in Pacific time. I'm rolling on the floor going, how am I going to choose?
Part of it. That was the best tweets. It was, for us, it was the best part of the rewatch because you guys made so many comments that were just hilarious. And it's like, it felt like being on a big living room with all of you. And that was the point of it. And so, yeah. Thank you.
I'd be curious if you can make some generalities here. How much of the XF fandom hinges on Mulder and Scully and their relationship? And just generally, like, describe XF fans and what they're like and what you all have in common. Like, what makes somebody so devoted to the show?
Statistically, like, X-Files fans are higher educated than like normal TV fan bases. Like, you guys always had people with like more doctorates, master's degrees watching. Like, I read a study on it once, or like some type of article. like, and that's like really evident, like with the way you like interact with fans. Like, you can, like, I remember sitting down at, I think it was like David's play next to this woman, and in New York City, I'm like 21. She's like in her 60s at least. and we find out that we're both X-Files fans, and like we don't have anything in common at all, but like we can go back and forth about like really in-depth knowledge about the X-Files and like very specific like fan fiction authors, like in the middle of this play before it started, which is like, and they're like willing to have that like 3-hour conversation with you, like people I've like barely met, like we're like getting pizza, and you know we discuss like the timeline of Mulder and Scully's relationship, which I think is pretty important. And they can you can do that with like anyone. Like I don't have to know any of you specifically, but we could like discuss something really in depth and we'd be on the same level. We know what we were talking about. And like I think that's like one of the things I picked up the most from X-Files fans is that they know what they're talking about.
And yeah, to condense into that, it's just like you guys are, or we are all so passionate about our show. I love that it's been out there so long that now, even though we internally know that it belongs to Chris and you and whoever wrote it, but it really belongs to us. And
we have some say.
Yeah. It's like
Mulder and Scully met in 1992, and I'm sorry, Chris Carter, but that's what happened.
It's on the Chiron. We're sticking to it.
Yeah. And but I love that regardless of whether you are a shipper or a Noromo or whatever defines the part of the show that you like, everyone, it's, yes, smart, it's passionate, it's kind. They are very grateful for what we have, even when sometimes we feel like the newer generations might seem like they're entitled. They're not, because they're just that passionate that they're expecting you to go the next level. And it's not only about you. I know that the people that are writing these fan fictions are expecting of themselves as much, and the people that are reading the fan fiction are expecting just the best. And we appreciate all these people for the talent that they have. And those talents are so recognized amongst our community that we all wear our own t-shirts that we design, and we're fans of someone's writing, and we buy the book that they actually went and published with their own original works. And so for me, that part of being so supportive of each other, it's the best part of the fandom.
And how much of it hinges on Mulder and Scully, or are there other aspects that come close to being as important to that relationship, you think, in the enduring fandom for the show?
I think, you know, especially as it's like wound down the last couple of years, like a lot of the people that are like really left are like really invested in Mulder and Scully, and like, like it's a pretty like big part of like what we watch for, and we don't like. The X-Files was never like Mulder and Scully and like them dating, you know, like we don't want something like that, but to see like the relationship evolve to where it should be at this point in time, and like there were some episodes I thought handled it like really beautifully, and like that's the type of like evolution I want to see, because like it's always in those scenes, like I always want to get inside their head, and it's usually like Scully's head I usually want to get inside of, and like to see it kind of like understand it better and see how it's evolved has been really important. And sometimes it like missed it, and that was like really hard to deal with, because it felt like that's like how I attached myself to the show at this stage. So
I'm giggling for two reasons. One, how many other fandoms do you know where we will pick apart a 2-second gaze GIF for how long, and like the photos, and we're analyzing the eye lines? And the thing that strikes me the most about how important that relationship is, I'm sure y'all remember during season 11 when there was that promo for Nothing Lasts Forever that came out, and they're coming in the church, and I may or may not have said something not so very nice to that promo editor, because I'm like, you cannot tease this fandom like that. Not when they've waited how long, you know, I mean, there's a way to, he said he wanted to be true to the story. I was like, there's a way to do that and not mislead people, you know? So that was kind of amusing. But the backlash for that, I mean, honestly, I felt bad, because that was one of my, I saw it before the promos and stuff came out, and it was one of my favorite episodes of the season. But as I'm seeing the speculation, I'm going, oh no, because we can't say anything contractually. And I knew so many people were going to be upset and be really hurt by that, and there was a lot of that, and to the point where I felt like a lot of people kind of missed the point of that conversation on the first viewing, because they were expecting something that just wasn't going to happen, and that I think was a very big highlight of how much that relationship is still so very, very important to other people.
Can I just say it's been like 10 years since Mulder and Scully kissed. It's it was 2008. It was I Want to Believe.
Yeah.
And like there was like 2-ish there. So.
Yeah. But also to that regard, even though it's all about Mulder and Scully, there is a very important part of the fandom that it's rooting for Doggett and Reyes, and that, or even Monica and Scully.
Guilty.
It's equal opportunity here.
Damn right.
You know, and yes, many of those, not that there was ever, I guess, a thread about Monica and Scully, but even if the John and Monica story was this size, because of these fanfiction writers and the amount of time that we spend with the show in our heads waiting for you guys to get it together, then, you know, it's like in my head, John and Monica have 3 kids and they live in a cabin. John is a biker and she has a bunch of like new agey stuff, and at some point they went with Scully and Mulder to go rescue William, who wasn't an evil kid. So like, you know, yeah.
I'm going to keep asking questions, but anybody else, please, we'd love to hear from you. Are we out of time?
We have 13, well, let's say 8. Okay.
We have 8 minutes. Talk about the decision to wind up the website, and why and how you're all feeling about that.
So the first time that we said that we were gonna close XFN was way back before the revival. Basically because we were struggling with money and nothing was happening. We were struggling technically with the site, and internally I wasn't the editor-in-chief at the time, or I didn't hold the power, and so it was becoming very taxing emotionally to try to keep the site together. Also, everything that was ever done by XFN, it was never funded by anyone but us. So that one donation to hold the hosting was the only money we ever got. And so it was a struggle, but you know, we kept getting tips either from you or from Chris or whatever, so we kept it together and we braved through it, and it went through many other things, like me moving to 4 different countries and them going through several real life things. And at some point, whenever Chris said there's going to be a revival, for us it was pretty dealt that, okay, we'll do the revival, we'll go through it because we committed to this is what we wanted to do in a way. Our objective actually was the movie, but, well, this came along and this is better, or one would think. Not bitter, it's just, you know, mixed emotions about it.
I'm a little bitter.
But, you know, we knew that, I mean, I was 20-something when I started this, and now I'm almost 40. And, you know, many life and family sacrifices and getting into fights with my family over how much time went into this, that you need to get back to your own priorities. So after the revival, we said to Chris on season 11, it's like, we kind of feel like this is going to be it. We're going to give you the full season a little bit after. We need to call it, because we need to also, we gave so much, even though it's a shared dream into like doing what we did, ultimately it was for other people. I mean, we were working for the fandom, and that was our job. But now we always had so many dreams throughout the time that we wanted to put together, whether together or on our own. And And that was the main reason to think about ourselves for the first time in 12 years. And yeah, it's been pretty tough, as you can see. I've been a basket case about it from time to time. Every time that I get to writing about it, and I did like two articles about it, it took days because I would be bawling. The last interview with Chris, that was quite an experience, not only for the conversation that we had that was super honest. Me writing this thing, it took 3 full days of like straight on crying through writing this thing, and not because of the episode or anything. It was just the momentous thing of like, we started out as like, maybe we'll get an interview with like someone from the show, to like, hell, like I just sat down and like told Chris Carter to his face, you fucked it up right here. And it's not like you guys are clapping, but I love Chris. Like as much as I love you, I love Chris for all the opportunities that he gave us. Like, he was so generous about so many things with us, to the point that he could do things. And telling him that I didn't like something, it wasn't a pleasant thing. It hurt to tell him that. So, you know, to come to the end of XFN also with having that conversation, and professionally how that hits me, it's very emotional. So, yeah.
It's been weird, I think, because it's been such a huge, and I was late to the game, but it's been such a big part of my everyday, and I'm still, even though we've slowed down, it's checking, you know, our Twitter, and are there questions I need to answer, you know, what are we doing over here? And it's been such a remarkable opportunity for me. I mean, I grew up in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, Wisconsin, and it just hit me because we were fortunate enough to be invited to go to set when they were shooting My Struggle 4. There's that photo of Mulder and Scully standing in their own remarkable house just before Mulder leaves to go find William. We're standing on the other side of that wall, and that to me just breaks my brain, and I am just so grateful to have had that opportunity, and for all of you, you know, who have followed us, for helping make so many of these amazing opportunities we've all had and the times we've spent together fun. I will definitely miss the rewatches and stuff like that, and just the opportunity to speak to people about what the fandom has meant to you. It was definitely a mixed feeling when we decided to say goodbye, just because I mean, season 11, as that was airing, I had 2 full-time jobs between this and with my day job. And I hope this doesn't come across as complaining, because it was truly a blessing. But at the same time, it's just a lot, and when you don't want to slack on either. You don't want to slack professionally, you don't want to slack, you know, with this either. So there just kind of comes a point where, and I think too, it's sort of been, I mean, with season 11, it does, I don't know how you all feel, but for the most of the fandom, I feel like that sort of felt like a conclusion, like kind of there's not been a lot of talk about season 12 now, with as far as what that even means as far as Disney and Fox, and it just felt like kind of a natural progression for us to step back, and I'm sure, I have no doubt that there will be somebody that will fill the void. Like, it'll be fine. So, but just thank you again to all of you guys.
Well, I think, like, XFN has been like a decade of my life at this point, and for the longest time, it was like the first thing I checked on my phone when I woke up in the morning, and it was the last thing I looked at before I went to sleep. Like, make sure I've answered everything, like, you know, we know what we're doing, we're organized, you know, and I feel like an obligation to be, like, covering things. Like, if I'm, like, I missed New York Comic Con for, like, the premiere and everything, and I, like, lived right outside New York for, like, the longest time, so, like, that I wasn't there to, like, be there for that premiere and, like, cover that and do that, like, it felt like I was, like, shirking my responsibilities as, like, a fan. And so, like, I still feel that, like, pull to, like, that, like, I should be doing these things, I should be taking photos, I should be, like, live, you know, like, it's like, built in at this stage. But it's also, like, such an incredibly large amount of work when I look back. And I live tweeted the East Coast feed for season 11 from XFN, and I was like in England at the time, so it was like 1 in the morning.
Sheep farm.
Yeah, and the last episode, I was on a sheep farm because I was lambing, because you have to lamb in England, it's a thing, and literally I'd been up at like 3 a.m. like the night before lambing, and I was like, I need this night off, guys, and like these Welsh farmers were like, for what? It's like, it's the X-Files finale. And I was in this like dark little like Welsh sheep farm that was like built a few hundred years ago, and I was just like on my laptop, like live tweeting. And it's been like a stretch to do that, and I think especially with like vet school, like it's just, I can't stay up that late and live tweet anymore.
Yeah,
so.
we're getting old.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's been a lot, but it is surprisingly hard to let go. Like, every Friday morning, I still immediately go to YouTube for FanVid Friday. I'm like, oh, what new FanVids we have? Oh, I don't have anywhere to put them. Like, okay, I'll just watch them. Which is good, because we can kind of, like, enjoy stuff as fans now, as opposed to, well, I have to make a post, and I have to go promote it on Twitter and Facebook. So it's hard to let go of, but I think it's also, like, a relief.
Yeah.
Because we're old.
Not that I've had too much time because of someone, but like then now I can read fanfic. Like I hadn't read fanfic in so long. Like really read fanfic. That's been great. Also, I saw kind of a Scully-centric video the other day that was amazing, and I could like sit through the whole thing instead of like scrolling. It's like, oh, okay, does it have a bat font that I cringe about? Okay, no. Like that's my pet peeve. I cringe at bat fonts. So, and I always gave them grief about it. But like
She's the worst editor ever.
It's horrible.
She's so mean.
Yeah. I'm not mean. But yeah, I look forward, like I said, I look forward to like actually whenever I do have the time to go to cons and just sit there and like not be worried about, oh, it's 11, I have to be here and I have to be there and like I have to email this to Fox and I have to get permission from someone and I have to apologize for something that I didn't do, or like, yeah.
We've apologized a lot.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, there's, to the question that you asked earlier about things that are sucky about being in the spotlight, I actually don't like that, people think of me as some kind of different to them. That's a byproduct that I didn't expect nor wanted. And I didn't want that notoriety also in the bad sense that all of you are kind and amazing, but there are people that are actually bad. And in being so exposed, then our private lives are exposed. And I got death threats, and we all have a stalker that it's pretty frightening, and that we've had to go to the cops and everything with it. So, it's great. It's also, this is the kind of stuff that at the end of the day we have to tell our families, okay, we are quitting eventually, because otherwise they would kick us out.
My dad did say to me, I went home to visit for a couple of days before I came here, and he's just, so what are you doing in Chicago again? And Dad, I'm covering an X-Files convention, but this is our last one. And he looks at me and goes, last one? Yeah, right. Where have we heard this before? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. So
Yeah, I'm with your dad on that.
Right?
Well, we're out of time, but I would like to personally thank you all for your intelligence, your integrity, your dedication. I think you've enriched this journey immeasurably. You're like inextricably part of the X-Files, and for me, I feel honored by all the work you've done. So, thank you very much.
Because now I get to do that to him.
Yeah. Now it's his turn in the hot seat. Oh.